Happy Sabbath, everyone. So from today, I'm going to start a new series about worship entitled The Heart of Worship. This series is gonna be 4 parts. So the first one that we're going to talk about is what is worship? And the second part is going to be worship and the covenant. Worship and the covenant. And third part will be life of worship. And the last one, praise and worship. So today, what is worship? You know, the idea of worship people understand seems pretty foggy and vague. It's like, we understand being poor in spirit is just being humble. But it's more than that. I've been talking about what it means to be poor in spirit here and there many times. But anyway, when people ask, what is worship? People likely to have the idea, the definition of worship very vaguely. So we really need to get the right definition of worship in order to worship properly as worshipers. Because John 4, I think verse 24 says, God is seeking those who worship in the spirit and truth. So what is worship? Is it coming to church to attend worship services? Is it like singing songs together in the worship service with saints? Is it reading the Bible every day in a certain time? Having devotional every morning or every evening, or coming together with church members to have a prayer meeting? Is it helping others who are in need? What is worship? So I hope that we will have better idea, better understanding what worship means through this series. Last year was the year of election for this country. So United States of America elected the new president that will lead this country for the next 5 years. Korea had this election like 4 years ago in 2017, and they will do it again next year. So usually democratic countries, a form of vote is employed to elect a new leader among many candidates. So people choose one of many who run for the election. The choice of the leader starts from the choice of the pledge of the candidates, or the promise or the policies of the candidates. We don't just choose the person without considering all the pledges, all the promises, all the policies that they're presenting. We have to consider the policies, the pledges that the candidates are presenting, because when we choose a person, we're not only choosing that person, we're choosing the policies, the pledges, the promises. And this is the reason why candidates, they want to come up with some good pledges so that they can win people's heart. Of course, people's vote. So when people choose a leader, it's actually, who they choose shows us what policies they support, right? I didn't bring all the ideas, all the policies, all the pledges that these candidates presented when they were doing all these things. But we know that they have all different kinds of pledges, all the promises, right? So it is not the person that we choose, but the policies, or so to speak, the laws the candidates claim that will make this country better. So it is not a war of power. It is actually a war of ideas and laws or principles. If it had been power that determines who to become a leader, then Trump would have won the vote this time again because he has the power, he has the money, right? Of course, in the ancient times, those who were strongest in any aspects became leader of their tribes, of their kingdoms, and so on, right? Of course, even now, there are some countries that are still the same in terms of electing the leader. But it is really different now, for the most part, these days. It doesn't matter how much power we have when it comes to electing a leader of a country. It's really about what ideas, what policies that they have. And it's really about how they accomplish the policies. And, these days we have TV programs where the candidates appear and debate on their policies, asking all different questions regarding, can it really make this country better? Can it really make a difference? So people say it's a war of words. Words are an expression of what they think, what they reason. So war of words, war of ideas, war of principles, war of law. The Bible says there was war in heaven. Revelation 12 verse 4, then war broke out in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. We know that this war is not of power, physical power, not of weapons. This is not a war, this is not a physical war. This is a war of words, of ideas, of principles, of laws. We once studied the story of Korah's rebellion when we were doing the series of Plan of Salvation. Let us just go back to the story briefly and go over what that was. Korah wanted to take a Moses' position and go into the council of God where Moses was called to join. When Korah saw Moses was pretty much the same human being as himself. Well, again, I'm not going to go over everything about this story. So when Moses performed all the miracles, all the people were like, oh wow, he must be different from us. But when Moses started to live among the people, they began to realize that, this guy is pretty much the same as me. So that's exactly how Korah thought. So in order for Korah to win the support of other leaders and replace Moses' position, he attacked the law Moses brought. And this is exactly how the politicians are doing these days, right? They attack the other party's laws and say that's not how they can make this country better. And this is how we can make this country better. So they contend, they fight. So when Korah brought up the law, to just give you a kind of like random example of the claims Korah must have made at the time. So for Israel's happiness, Moses said, remember and rest one day. This is an example. So Moses was telling Israelites to remember one day and to rest on that day. But Korah raised an objection to that by saying, you know what, we have to work without ceasing, without rest to succeed, because It is success that will make us happy. When people heard the two present their ideas, their policies, their laws, their principles, they must have been like, oh, okay, that could be true. So among those who heard both parties' ideas, 1/3 of the leaders of Israel chose Korah. So, it is that those who chose Korah actually chose what Korah presented, what Korah claimed, his idea, his principle, his law. So it was not just Korah, the person that was chosen, but his claim, his idea, his principle that was chosen by 1/3 of the leaders. So those who chose the law of Korah, they were willing to give Korah the supremacy. So when we chose the new president of this country, we all agreed that we would give him the supremacy to rule over this country. And then what that means is that we will have to follow the person, the leader, the president. So what law to choose determines whose supreme power to acknowledge. Are you tracking with me? What type of principle to choose, what type of ideas to choose determines whose supreme power to acknowledge. In the rebellion of Korah is seen the working out of the same principle upon a narrow stage that led to the rebellion of Satan in heaven. In short, the rebellion of Korah is like a miniature of the rebellion of Satan in heaven. So when Lucifer rebelled against the government of God, talking about the parallel of the story of Korah with the story of Lucifer's rebellion, Michael, the chief angel, the captain of angels, Michael looked pretty much the same as himself as an angel, right? But Michael was always called to participate the council of God to discuss matters and plan things for the world of angels and for the entire universe. So Lucifer wanted to take his position to go into the council of God. So he decided to attack the law Michael was kind of trying to lay down as the foundation of the angelic world. Lucifer attacked Michael's law in order to win the support of other angels. Oh, by the way, when Lucifer brought up the issue of the law, when the angels first heard about the law, they must have been like, oh, has there been a law like that? At first, they didn't know there had been a law. Why? Because they were created in the image of God and they had been naturally observing it. Are you with me on that? They didn't know that there was a law behind the sin. It's like, we, even in this country as we live, we don't try to observe every single law, right? We don't know every single law, but still we are observing, we are keeping the law. And that's why we're safe. We're not arrested, so to speak. Right? And if I give you another example, we don't teach our kids to be selfish. What kind of parents would teach their kids to be selfish? Of course, we don't teach our kids to be selfish, but even though we are not educated to be selfish, but we find ourselves, our kids, we sometimes find our kids selfish in some aspects, even though we didn't teach them to be selfish in that regard. We are so saturated with sin that we don't even know when we are selfish. Just like that, the angels were very so saturated with the image of God that they didn't know that they were keeping the law of God. Are you with me for that? So, for the happiness of the universe, Lucifer and Michael, what they were saying, what they were claiming was different. So Michael said, we should conform to God's law completely in order for all of us to be perfectly happy. But Lucifer said, we don't necessarily have to conform to the law perfectly, but in some aspects, we should be selfish sometimes. Well, when I said God's law, it's seeking others' good, right? Putting others first, seeking others' good. But Lucifer said, at times we have to seek our own good in order for us to be happy. When the angels heard this, they were like, oh, okay, could be, right? We already saw this picture. It was a war of words. It was a war of ideas, of principles, of laws. Again, what law to choose, what principle to choose, what type of attitude to choose determines whose supreme power to acknowledge. When they chose the principle of Satan, they were actually willing to acknowledge the supreme power of Satan over them. So, from what we have just talked about, let's try to draw the definition of worship. Worship is to choose the law for us to follow and to acknowledge the supreme power over us. And this is the reason why many people say that the war between God and Satan is the war of worship. Because the core issue of the great controversy is about who to worship. Well, Revelation chapter 14, verse 7, fear God and give Him glory because the hour of His judgment has come. Worship Him who made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and the springs of water. Worship the Creator. But in the previous chapter, Revelation chapter 13, the second beast was given power to give breath to the image of the first beast, so that the image could speak and cause all who refused to worship the image to be killed. So on this side, angels are saying that worship the Creator, worship Him who made all the things. And on the other side, it is said that we have to worship the beast, the dragon. Why is who to worship so important? It's not about just saying, I believe in Jesus. It's not about just saying that. It's not about just attending the service. It's not about singing songs with hands up, like this picture. It's not about that. It's not about listening to sermons. It's not about giving offerings. It's not about fellowshipping with people. Then what is it about? It's about what principle to choose. It's about whose attitude to desire. It's about whose supreme power to acknowledge. There are many who profess to believe, but there's only a few who choose the principle, the law. Again, it doesn't matter where you are. What matters is what law, what principle we choose. When I say the law, I just don't mean Sabbath, because a lot of Seventh-day Adventists tend to think that Revelation chapter 12 verse 17 says that the saints are the people who keep the commandments of God. When the Bible says the commandments of course, the fourth commandments have been misused a lot and have been done away with. So that's why we tend to focus on the fourth commandment. But it's part of the commandments, and the commandments is pretty much about the law of God that is seeking others' good. So I don't just mean Sabbath. God wants to restore His supremacy in the heart of those who choose His law. So making the principle of seeking others' good mine is actually worshiping God. We can be in the church, like sitting on the pew, singing songs, listening to sermons, but if we are not choosing the principle of seeking others' good, then we're not worshiping God. Satan wants his supremacy in the heart of those who choose his law too. So making the principle of seeking own good mine is worshiping Satan. A lot of people, they are confused about what the mark of the beast is really. And I hope in the future I will have some time to dig in that part to find out what 666, what the mark of the beast it really is. But it's pretty much about which principle, which law we choose to follow. There is no neutral area between these two. It's like the both sides of a coin. It's like between light and darkness. The core issue of the great controversy is worship. But again, worship is not just attending the church service. It's not just singing songs with raised hands. No. It's about what principle to choose. So principle of seeking others' good or the principle of seeking my own good. Let me read you a quotation from the book Education. I really want you to pay attention to this quotation. He should understand. Here, he refers to the Bible student. It actually refers to all of us. He should understand the nature of the two principles that are contending for supremacy, and should learn to trace their working through the records of history and prophecy to the great consummation. He should see how this controversy enters into every phase of human experience, how in every act of life he himself reveals the one or the other of the two antagonistic motives, and how, whether he will or not, he is even deciding upon which side of the controversy he will be found. In our daily lives, we see these two principles that are contending for supremacy in our hearts. We know that. And we see how this controversy enters in every phase of our experience, and how in every act of our life we reveal the one or the other of the two antagonistic motives. When we choose the principle of seeking my own good, we are actually supporting Satan and his claim. Because Satan is saying that we can be happy when we choose this principle. Right? A lot of people in this world are following that voice. Success is something that will make us happy. So we should work and keep working and working. We should make all these things, right? And also, we should seek our own good. Even Christians, how can we live our life without seeking our own good? They make excuses. Let me read you another quotation from the Desire of Ages. The warfare against God's law, which was begun in heaven, will be continued until the end of time. Of course, because that is the core issue of the great controversy. Every man will be tested. Obedience or disobedience is the question to be decided by the whole world. Again, it's not about keeping it's not about keeping the day of the seventh day. All will be called to choose between the law of God and the laws of man. Well, I hope you understand why Ellen White is saying the laws of man, because man is so inclined to the sinful nature that we follow Satan's way. So that's why it's called the laws of man. Here, the dividing line will be drawn. There will be but two classes. Only two classes, only two parties. Every character will be fully developed, and all will show whether they have chosen the side of loyalty or that of rebellion. Which side you want to stand? Which supremacy you want to acknowledge of your heart, of your life? So worship is to choose which principle, which law for our heart, for our lives. And the worship is to give the supreme power to the one who called us to enjoy his law. So the heart of worship, as we go on with this series, I really hope that we can have better idea, better understanding of what it means to worship, what the true worship really looks like. And I really hope that we can all be true worshipers. Worship does not take place only in the church, only in this service, but in your daily lives, every moment, every second. This is my prayer that we all manifest the aspect of true worshiper, because God is seeking those who worship in the spirit and truth.